Allison's POV. Here's your glass of. The world shattered around me in an instant. 1 second, I was just doing my job, and the next, I was standing frozen, watching the man I once adored with someone else. The glass slipped from my fingers and shattered against the floor, echoing in the empty hall. I didn't even realize I had dropped it until the shards of crystal scattered around my feet. Alpha Kendrick looked up from the couch, his hands still tangled in Priya's hair, while Priya's narrowed eyes found me in an instant. Silence fell over the room, thick and dangerous. What the hell do you think you're doing walking in like you own the place? Priya's voice cut through the silence like a whip. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I didn't know. My words stumbled out, tripping over each other as I stared down at my hands, trembling. You didn't know? Priya sneered, untangling herself from Kendrick's grasp. You didn't think to knock either, did you, slave? I wanted to speak, to retort, to say something. Anything that might stand up to her venomous glare, but nothing came. Instead, I clenched my jaw, tightened my fiat and lowered my gaze. Sarcasm burned into my tongue, but I swallowed it knowing better. I could feel Alpha Kendrick's gaze on me, cold and impassive, as if he barely saw me. With a quick step, Priya closed the distance between us and raised her hand. I braced myself, but nothing prepared me for the sting as her palm cracked across my face. The impact sent me reeling, throwing me backward. I hit the floor with a sickening thud, sharp pain radiating through my body as shattered glass bit into my palms and knees. The pain was 1,000 tiny fires beneath my skin, but I didn't dare make a sound. Pathetic. Priya's voice dripped with disgust as she watched me struggle to sit up. It's your own fault for being so useless. I fought to keep my head down, to avoid showing how much I was hurting, how much the pain twisted and curled inside me. My mind raced with thoughts I couldn't control, anger, sadness, a desperate longing for the man I fantasized about to defend me. He was right there, just feet away from me, but he might as well have been 1,000 miles away. Enough, Priya. Alpha Kendrick's voice boomed, cutting through my thoughts, sharp and commanding. My heart leapt, and for one foolish, ridiculous second, I thought he was about to say something in my defense, to chastise Priya for her cruelty. I glanced up, hope flickering in my chest like a dying flame. But one look at his expression extinguished it instantly. Alpha. The words died on my lips as he reached into his pocket and withdrew a small, glimmering box. He opened it to reveal a ring. My stomach twisted as he took Priya's hand, right there in front of me. Priya, he said, his voice as smooth as silk. Will you be my wife? Priya's eyes sparkled with triumph as she gasped, her hand flying to her mouth in an exaggerated display of surprise. Oh, Kendrick, she purred, turning the ring so it glinted in the light. Yes, 1,000 times yes. She turned her gaze toward me, a cruel smile tugging at her lips as she held her hand out to flaunt the ring. My vision blurred as I fought the tears that threatened to spill, but I couldn't hold back the overwhelming ache that spread through my chest. What the hell are you still doing here, you slave? Kendrick's voice was cold, dismissive, as though I were nothing more than a smudge on the wall, an inconvenience. And nothing. Alpha, I whispered, my voice barely audible. It took everything in me to stand, to rise from the broken glass, and make myself small enough to escape this nightmare. I felt numb, like a ghost slipping from the room, trying to disappear into the walls. But his eyes, oh, those dark, terrifying eyes, followed me, pinning me to the spot before I could take another step. There was something in that gaze, something far more dangerous than Priya's slap or her sneering insults. He signaled for Priya to leave. She glanced between us, her amusement fading as she caught the darkness clouding Kendrick's face. She opened her mouth to protest, but Kendrick's low growl silenced her. Leave us, he commanded, his tone brooking no argument. Priya's face contorted with fury, but she hesitated only a moment before she turned on her heel, throwing me one last glare before slamming the door behind her. The silence that followed was suffocating. Kendrick's gaze lingered on me, that same dark intensity that made my heart pound with dread. I'm sorry, I whispered, clutching my bleeding hands to my chest. My voice shook, and I hated myself for sounding so weak, so pitiful. Kendrick advanced, each step echoing through the room as he closed the distance between us. I tried to back away, but my feet felt rooted to the floor, trapped beneath his cold, unfeeling gaze. He stopped mere inches from me, his eyes tracing over the cuts on my hands, the trembling in my shoulders. "Look at you," he said softly, his tone almost amused. "So fragile, so easy to break, what a pathetic life." I swallowed hard, willing myself not to react, not to flinch. I knew better than to give him any satisfaction, any hint of the fear simmering beneath my skin. But as his fingers grazed my cheek, tracing the spot where Priya's slap had landed, I couldn't help the shiver that ran down my spine. I'm sorry, Alpha," I stammered, desperate to say anything that might appease him, to make myself small enough to escape his wrath. "I didn't mean to interrupt." "Oh, I know you didn't mean to." His voice was soft, almost a whisper, and that made it all the more terrifying. "But you did. And now, you're going to have to pay for it." I felt the walls closing in, the air thickening around me as his fingers trailed down my arm, stopping at the torn skin on my palm. He pressed down on the wound, sending a jolt of pain shooting through me, but I bit down on my lip to stifle the cry threatening to escape. "Pain looks good on you, my dear little Allison," he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. "It suits you." I fought to keep my voice steady, to hold back the tears that burned in my eyes. "Please don't." He leaned in close, so close that I could feel his breath against my ear, and whispered, "Begging now, are we?" My heart raced, a wild, panicked rhythm that I couldn't control. I forced myself to hold still, to keep my breathing steady, but every instinct screamed at me to run, to flee from the twisted satisfaction in his gaze. "Do you know why you're still here, Allison?" His voice was low, dangerous, as he took a step back, crossing his arms and regarding me with a disdainful glare. "Because I enjoy watching you squirm." I flinched, the words cutting deeper than any slap, any bruise. He enjoyed this, my suffering, my helplessness. I was nothing to him but a pawn, something to toy with, to control. "Now," he said, his voice a cold command, "clean up this mess. And don't let me see you slacking, or you'll regret it." "Yes, Alpha," I whispered, lowering my head to hide the shame burning in my cheeks. My hands shook as I knelt down, gingerly gathering the shards of glass with trembling fingers. Each piece cut into my skin, fresh blood mingling with the tears that finally slipped free, no longer able to hold back the overwhelming weight of despair. As I worked, Kendrick's footsteps retreated, but I knew he hadn't left entirely. He stood by the door, watching me with that dark, predatory gaze, as if waiting for me to falter, to give him a reason to punish me again. And in that moment I knew I was truly trapped. There was no escape from him, from this place, from the endless cycle of cruelty and power that bound me like chains. As the last piece of glass slipped from my fingers, I dared to glance up, meeting Kendrick's gaze one final time. His expression was unreadable, his eyes as cold as ever, but I could feel the threat simmering beneath the surface. "Good girl," he murmured, a twisted smile tugging at his lips. And then, without another word, he turned and left, leaving me alone with my shattered pride, the sting of his words echoing in my mind. But something inside me stirred, something small and defiant, a glimmer of hope that one day, somehow, I would be free from him. Even if it was just a foolish dream, I clung to it, holding on to that fragile spark, as if it were my last shred of sanity. Kendrick's POV. The light was dim, filtering through the high kitchen windows, casting shadows that seemed to dance as I walked into the quiet room. But then there was a sound, soft, unexpected. Singing. Her voice untrained and raw, yet filled with a haunting melody. I stepped forward, my boots scuffing against the tile floor. Her singing stopped and she whipped her head up, startled. Allison's wide eyes met mine as she knelt on the kitchen floor, scrubbing, looking every bit the slave she was, a mere servant in the Silver Moon Pack, where I'd held dominance and strength for years. But there was something different in her gaze that unnerved me, though I'd never admit it aloud. "How long have you been here, Allison?" I asked, the words slipping out of my mouth before I could think them through. She swallowed, then answered in a voice so quiet I almost didn't hear it. 17 years, Alpha. 17 years. 17 years of watching her serve in silence, her presence nothing more than background noise, her life a flicker in the vast landscape of my own power. And yet, for some reason, I felt an odd curiosity to understand this girl, This woman who had silently woven herself into the fabric of my pack. "Stand up," I ordered. Her hands trembled as she set the scrub brush aside, lifting herself with the barest hint of defiance. A flicker of something rebellious flashed in her eyes, a spark that had no place here. But I ignored it, drawing closer, circling her as though she were prey. The faintest scent of lavender and something uniquely hers hit my senses. I didn't want to accept this pull, but it tugged at something buried deep within me, something animalistic and raw. "Have you gotten your wolf yet?" My voice held an edge, as if her answer would determine her worth. "No," she replied, her gaze dropping to the floor. Despite her weakness, despite her quiet compliance, I sensed an underlying strength, one that refused to break, no matter how much I pushed her. "Why aren't you afraid of me?" I pressed my tone sharper now, probing. She was defiant but obedient, a balance that infuriated and intrigued me. I could sense that she had opinions, thoughts she kept buried. She could air them if she wanted to, yet she didn't. Not with me. She hesitated, her lips parting as if to say something, then closing them, trapping her words behind a veil of fear. I leaned closer, something primal roaring to life within me, my senses sharpening, my control slipping. With one swift movement, I wrapped my arm around her waist, pulling her against my body. She gasped, and the sound broke through the haze, sending a surge of satisfaction through me. She may have resisted the idea of fear, but her body betrayed her. Her heartbeat hammered against my chest, and I knew then that I had her under my power. "Alpha, please no," she whispered, her voice laced with desperation, eyes wide with apprehension. A thrill coursed through me, my wolf stirring at her protest. The anger, the challenge, the pure defiance in her tone. What right did she have to question me? I spun her, pressing her back against the wall, pinning her there, her face a mixture of terror and confusion. My hand snaked up to her neck, thumb tracing the delicate line of her pulse, savoring the fear I could feel pulsing beneath her skin. "Why are you resisting me?" I demanded, my voice rough, my control slipping as I let the beast within rise. "Do you not find me worthy, or is it something else?" Her lips trembled, and I could see the words forming, but they stayed locked behind clenched teeth. The silence, that silent defiance, ignited a fury within me, an animalistic need to remind her exactly who she was, who I was. "You're nothing but a slave," I hissed, tightening my grip slightly. "Someone I can do with as I please, whenever I please. Remember that." Without waiting for a response, I leaned down, capturing her mouth in a brutal, possessive kiss, forcing her to understand her place. Her struggle, faint but real, only fueled my dominance. She was powerless under me, and I wanted her to know it. She gasped against me, her hands pushing weakly against my chest, but it was useless. Her strength could never match mine. Then a subtle tap at the open door startled me, breaking the kiss. "Alpha." Silas, my beta, cleared his throat from the doorway, eyes averted yet respectful. "I apologize for the interruption. I have news that requires your attention." I exhaled heavily, forcing myself to let go of her. Allison collapsed to the floor, her back sliding down the wall, her breathing ragged. She barely glanced up at me as she clutched her neck, her skin already blooming with faint bruises. Something in me almost softened at the sight, but I hardened my heart, dismissing the thought. I turned to Silas, my voice cold. "Speak." With one last glance at Allison, I strode out of the kitchen, feeling her gaze linger on my back. Silas fell in beside me, his tone dropping to a confidential murmur as he filled me in on the pack's current affairs. "There's a council meeting scheduled," he began, keeping pace with my brisk stride. "It's an opportunity to strengthen our alliances, perhaps with Nightfang. I heard Alpha Xander would be present at the meeting. We'll need their support soon." I nodded, half listening as my mind drifted back to the kitchen, the look on Allison's face, the way she'd looked at me as though she held some kind of power over me. She didn't, of course, but something about her grated against my control, threatening to expose a part of me I wasn't ready to ever confront. "Alpha." Silas's voice cut through my thoughts, jolting me back to the present. "Are you certain about your engagement to Priya? There are whispers in the pack that—" "Whispers?" I sneered, my voice laced with contempt. "Let them whisper. The engagement with Priya is strategic. With her beside me, I'll gain the alliances I need." My tone grew colder. It doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. Silas hesitated, glancing around before lowering his voice even further. And, Allison? I stopped in my tracks, fixing him with a warning glare. What about her? Silas's gaze faltered, but he pressed on, his voice barely a whisper. Alpha, I know it's not my place, but you know she's your mate. The word left his lips like a poison, slithering into the air between us, stirring something deep and instinctual. I had sensed it 2 years ago, felt the strange pull toward her, still feel it whenever she is within reach, but I refused to let it control me. Not her. Not a slave. She could never be my Luna. She's nothing to me, I replied, my voice steely. And she will never be anything more than a servant in this pack. If you value your position as beta, I suggest you keep such thoughts to yourself. Silas nodded, though there was a glimmer of something in his gaze, a hint of doubt. But he wisely dropped the subject, returning to matters of the pack. We rounded the corner toward my quarters when a thought struck me, and I turned to him. Send out the invitations to Priya's engagement and wedding ceremony. I want it to be the grandest affair in the entire history of Silver Moon Pack. We're securing our future, our alliances. Silas nodded again, his expression impassive, but I could tell he was suppressing his own thoughts. Good. My wolf stirred, restless, but I pushed it back. Allison can never be my mate nor my Luna, and nothing would change that. I couldn't afford weakness. Not now, not ever. As I walked away, I felt an inexplicable tightness in my chest, a discomfort that lingered like a thorn under my skin. I forced myself to ignore it, but her face, the raw vulnerability, the faint bruises seemed burned into my mind. I clenched my jaw, shoving the memory aside. This was a distraction, nothing more. In my world, weakness had no place. Allison's point of view. What a day! I exhaled as I stared at myself in the mirror, adjusting the rough bandage on my hand, and brushing the dirt out from beneath my nails. It didn't really matter, but I wanted it to. I wanted to look less worn down, less like a servant, at least for tomorrow. Tomorrow, I would be turning 18, and the thought sent my heart spinning with a strange, stubborn hope. Would this birthday mean something more? Would I finally find my mate? The man who would help me out of this enslavement. The very idea of a mate. It was everything I'd clung to during my years here. When I closed my eyes at night, I pictured a strong man, someone who would see me, value me, maybe even love me. A laugh bubbled out of me, bitter and absurd. What if, just by some miracle, that mate turned out to be Alpha Kendrick? The thought was ridiculous. I had a crush on him, no doubt. He was powerful, commanding, and he now belonged to someone else. I shook my head, reminding myself of Priya, and the engagement dinner tomorrow night. Priya was beautiful, poised, from a noble family, and exactly the kind of woman worthy to become the pack's Luna. I knew better than to get lost in my foolish fantasies. I had spent my entire life in Silver Moon Pack learning my place. Still, I let myself imagine what it might be like to be with someone who cared. I knew it was a stupid thought, but my life was already filled with pointless dreams that kept me going. And after all, tomorrow would be the one day I could at least fulfill one of my long-time dreams. Alpha Kendrick had finally promised me time to myself. My first day off in 17 years of working like a horse around these stone walls. I ran my fingers over the smaller cuts on my hand, the skin sore and bruised from cleaning. Tomorrow I would be free, if only for a day. I'd explore the pack grounds I'd only glimpsed from the castle's windows, or the brief market runs. Just for a day, I'd get to feel something other than scrubbing floors, or dodging the sharp words of my superiors. Maybe I'd find a place to sit alone, a corner that felt a little less lonely, and just breathe. A sudden knock on my door jolted me back to the present. It was nearly midnight, and I couldn't imagine who would come to my room at this hour. My heart raced with a sick blend of hope and fear. But when I opened the door, I was met with a familiar, unkind face. Silas, I managed to ask, forcing a calmness into my voice that I didn't feel. Kendrick's beta rarely looked at me with anything but disdain. And tonight was no different. His smirk was cold, calculating, like he enjoyed knowing something I didn't. You're to serve at the engagement dinner tomorrow night, he said, his voice devoid of sympathy. There's been a large number of RSVPs, and we'll need all the help we can get. A cold weight dropped in my stomach. But Alpha Kendrick told me I'd have the day off, I replied, trying to keep the irritation from my voice. Well, the orders came from him, Silas said, with a mocking tone as if he relished watching my fragile hope shatter. And you will be there, Allison. That's an order from your Alpha. Before I could respond, he turned and disappeared down the corridor. I felt like screaming, the anger bubbling in my chest. How could Kendrick take back his promise so easily, without even a second thought? I shut the door, fists clenched, trying to swallow down the fury. My voice came out in a broken whisper. You couldn't even keep one simple promise. I stumbled back onto my bed, feeling that familiar hopelessness seep into my bones. One day, just one day to myself, and even that had been too much to ask. I sat there, hands gripping the blanket, feeling the weight of years pressing down on me. Tomorrow was supposed to be my escape, but now I'd be just another ghost, serving guests and pretending I didn't exist. But tomorrow was also my 18th birthday. I pressed my hands together, closing my eyes, praying to the moon goddess. Please, I begged, my voice barely a murmur. Grant me a strong wolf. If I'm not meant to find a mate who'll free me, at least give me the strength to leave. I'd rather become a rogue than remain here, trapped in this misery. My thoughts drifted back to Kendrick. But this time, it wasn't in longing. No, I felt a bitter resentment gnawing at me. He'd promised me something so small, a day off. And yet, he'd broken even that. As if my well-being didn't matter. As if I was nothing more than a tool he could wield and discard. I wanted to hate him, but the thought was exhausting. He would never see me as anything more than a mere servant. A nameless girl harbored by his pack, tasked only to serve and stay silent. I crawled beneath my blanket, curling up tightly, as if I could hide from the reality around me. But the pain lingered, sharp and unyielding. I whispered another prayer before sleep claimed me, clinging to the last sliver of hope. Maybe, just maybe, the moon goddess would hear me.